to episode 137 of Nothing to Say, the Fans Podcast. Today's episode will revolve around two topics. First one being the NBA Finals between the Golden State Warriors and the Boston Celtics. And then lastly, we will talk about the news that just broke from the LIV Golf League, the new golf league that is going to be, I guess, competing with the PGA, and the name that just joined the LIV Golf League, and that would be Dustin Johnson. So we'll start with the NBA, and then we'll move on to golf. All right. You ready?
Yeah.
You ready for this? All right. I'm super excited, honestly. I have so many thoughts spiraling around my head about these two games. So as of the recording of this episode, game 1 and game 2 have been played. This episode will be released Wednesday morning, which will be the morning of game 3. So let's start with game 1. That first game 1, Celtics win 120-108 over Golden State. They steal home court game 1. And even though that game looked like it was getting a little bit out of hand, the Warriors had their typical third quarter burst, and then all of a sudden Boston said, all right, we're going to score 40 points and you're only going to score 16, and we're going to steal the game. Jaylen Brown took over that game, and I understand that Jason Tatum, at least in terms of points, maybe wasn't his most productive night, but he did have 13 assists, 5 rebounds, was setting up his teammates very well. Al Horford decided he was Steve Kerr and hit a ridiculous amount of threes, had 26 points. Derek White, that game, anytime he was left open, he did not miss at all. Marcus Smart had a really good game. Robert Williams played well. The Celtics got a full contribution from their entire team that game. That fourth quarter was really, really impressive from them. They definitely deserved to win that game.
Yeah, and I think the most impressive thing is on the defensive side, holding Golden State to 16 points in that fourth quarter and allowing their offense to really catch up and then expand that lead to put it out of doubt. That game 1 happened for a long time ago for us, but that was, I think, a big statement win for Boston because they were coming in as the underdog in this series and really just laid it all out there, laid the blueprint out there on how they were going to potentially win this series.
Yeah, and we don't have to spend a ton of time on game 1 because, as you said, it was a while ago. But at the end of game 1, my initial thought was heading into game 2, Al Horford is not going to score more than 15 points. That was the over-under that I set it on. And then, boy, did I overshoot the mark for that because they made sure that Al Horford didn't do anything in game 2. He had 8 rebounds, so that's a good number, but he only had 2 points. I don't even think he took a 3. I believe the defensive adjustment that they made was they put Clay on Al Horford, and then they moved Draymond to Jaylen Brown. And that had an immediate impact right at the beginning of the game. There was a jump ball literally on the first play. Draymond set the tone right away. And then in terms of the adjustments that Golden State made, they pretty much saw that in game 1 that they were really successful in high pick and rolls, and they just stuck with it the whole game. It was pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll the entire game. And they were like, if you're not going to play up, then we're just going to keep bombing threes on you. And Steph, again, had a phenomenal game. He had 29 points, 4 assists, and 6 rebounds. And Golden State, again, had their massive third quarter, 35 points to Boston's 14. And after that, that was all she wrote after the third quarter.
Yeah, I think Steph's playing, at least from the last 2 games, playing the best ball back-to-back games for playoffs that we've seen in a while. And it's really good to see him play this well in the finals where he is putting the onus on himself to really carry this Golden State team. And I think it, like Steve Kerr said after the Western Conference Finals, we go and we stop and go as he does. You know, we follow Steph. I think this is a huge game. This is a huge series for the coaching staffs of each. I mean, you have one where Steve Kerr has won multiple championships, been to multiple finals. This is just a walk in the park for him, and he has a very experienced group. And then you have Boston, who this is the first time for everyone. And you really saw the adjustments being made, especially on the defensive end. I liked It seemed like Wiggins was taking Brown a lot or taking Tatum, and you had just Draymond and Wiggins taking those two the whole time and let everyone else work. And they're really, like you said, Tatum was able to set up teammates for open threes. In this game, maybe he tried to do that, but the Warriors were a little more active in the passing lanes and really stripping the ball, trying to get hands on everything. For one thing, the refs really let them play in game two,
Yeah,
I think
they
more so
did.
than game one. And there was a couple times where the broadcast noted, wow, that like they're letting a lot of hand stuff go in this game. And I
Yeah.
think that really benefited, you would think that would benefit Boston, but it really benefited the Warriors in getting in there and stripping the ball and just making it uncomfortable for a lot of talented Boston players. Uh, that's I'm very curious to see how Boston responds to Golden State turning up that level of defensive play.
Yeah, and so in terms of the Warriors defense, obviously they made those adjustments with the Clay and Draymond switch. But I also think a big thing for the Warriors is going to be keeping Andrew Wiggins on Jason Tatum. A lot of the deep threes that Tatum had were on smaller defenders, and he has not done well against Wiggins in this series. And I keep saying it every time I watch him play. He looks like a DB out there, just in the sense that obviously basketball players usually are like taller, but in terms of like the build, he just looks like a big like physical defensive back when he's playing defense, and just the athleticism that he plays with is. I could see why that would give Tatum fits, and why it has given him fits, because Wiggins is just such a physical freak of nature. He might be the best athlete on the floor, period. He's obviously not the best player, but he's probably the best athlete overall. And I've enjoyed really watching him dig in on defense against Tatum. So, to the point that you had said about letting these guys play, there was that instance with Draymond in game two where he fouls Jaylen Brown. They both fall down.
Mm.
Draymond at this point already has a tech, and then he falls and his legs sort of fall on Jaylen Brown, but he moves that right leg just a little bit, just to make sure it kind of rests on Jaylen Brown's head, just to kind of get in his head a little bit. And there was debate over whether or not he should have gotten a second technical for that. Especially because after that, when he got up, I think he tried to like yank Jalen's pants down, which just seemed totally uncalled for. Not for a technical, but just excessive. To me, I don't think that warrants a technical. Yeah, I think that that's just one of those things as a referee that you can look at and go, that's just them going at each other. It's not anything that nobody got hurt. I think that's another basis for me for judging technicals. Like, was anybody in serious danger of getting hurt? Did anybody get hurt? And that just felt like more of a petty thing. And I don't think that at all deserved a technical.
Yeah, I think the refs should be a little more lenient on that, because emotion is going to be running high in this series with all the things that are on the line going in. And Draymond is uber emotional, and you got to do your job as trying to sort of neutralize that and really make sure that that doesn't escalate. And I think that's your job first and foremost. If you throw out the tech for, I think, a little thing like that, like that's just gamesmanship at that point. And then
Well,
they talk a little bit after, and it's like,
yeah.
okay, we need to stop this. I'm not just going to tech them for nothing, pretty much nothing happening, right?
Yeah.
They just jaw a little bit, and then, okay.
Well, and I like the point that they made on the broadcast too. I think it was Mark Jackson that brought it up to Van Gundy. I think he brought it up to Van Gundy, and he was asking him about, if you're the referee, then do you take into account the fact that when that happens, Draymond already has a technical? Because if you give him a second technical, then obviously he's going to get ejected. So I liked their response to that, which was saying, yes, you have to take that into account, because one, it's not just a technical, it's an ejection. So you kind of have to look at it as, is this worth an ejection? Regardless of, because the technical is going to be there anyway. So if he didn't have a technical, then I think it might change the play. But because he has one, that definitely influences whether or not I think referees are going to throw out that technical. I hadn't thought of that, but I'm glad they brought it up, because once I heard it, I totally agree. Because when you look at it from that perspective, that definitely wouldn't deserve an ejection.
Yeah, but at the same time, is that fair from a Boston point of view? Like if that play happened and Draymond didn't have a tech already, and you can say like, oh, he probably would have gotten a tech for that if he had nothing, no ejection was on the line or anything. I'd feel pretty I'd be crushed about that, because that would have changed the game, because Draymond's fingerprints was on this game completely
the whole time.
Um,
It could be, but I mean, it would work both ways. It would just be the fact that the Warriors would benefit from it first in that sense.
Yeah, I like the call to not do that. And if I'm Boston, I'd want that to be consistent, because you're going to have players like Marcus Smart, or maybe Tatum picks up a couple technicals because of how physical the series is. Like, you want that leniency a little bit from the referees so they don't decide the game.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree with you in the sense that they let them play, and for me, I enjoy watching that type of basketball. I enjoy watching more physical basketball, so I do hope that continues. So I guess we'll just see. I mean, Boston plays that way regardless. So, but you know what? So does Golden State. I mean, Boston, they were the number one defensive team in the league in terms of efficiency, and Golden State was number two. And you don't get that way by playing lackadaisical defense. So they're both physical defenses in that sense. I mean, Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green alone are enough to do that. All right, so two quick takes that I had, and I want to get your opinion on this.
Okay.
I know what one of your opinion on it is going to be, so I'll save it for the last one. But the first one that I had was, so everybody, if you watch game one and game two, realized obviously that Jason Tatum had a much better shooting performance in game two. He had 28 points. I think he hit 5 or 6 threes. Was really efficient in the first half, but he didn't make a bucket in the second half. I mean, no, he made one. Sorry, he made one bucket in the second half. In game one, he was really struggling. He was really struggling finding a shot. He only had 12 points, but he had 13 assists, and he was setting up his teammates so much better. I think his plus minus in game two was it was in the negative 20s or negative 30s. He was really hurting his team based on that stat when he was out there. So my thought coming out of game one and game two is that I don't think Jason is as important as he is to this series, and I think he's the most important player for Boston. I don't think his importance is going to come from scoring alone. Like if you go back to the Milwaukee series, he had to put up a historic, almost 50-point game. He has had to put up a couple really big games in terms of scoring. I don't think that this series is going to call for him to do that. I think based on how good Golden State is on defense, I think he's going to really need to kind of morph into a scorer, which he was in that first half, and do what he did in game one, which obviously feels like a duh statement. Like, oh, he needs to score and set up his teammates. Yeah, well, yes, but Jason Tatum, first and foremost, is a scorer. People were praising him in game one for having that many assists, but that's because he doesn't do that every single game. He normally puts up a lot of points every game. Yeah. So to me, instead of having like a 33 5-5 game, I think he's going to need like a 26 8-9 type of game in terms of having not only those points but really looking to set up his teammates, because it really worked in game one, and I think it showed that Boston doesn't need him to score a bazillion points for them to win. Now, you might not get 26 out of Al Horford every night, but I still think the point stands.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of disagree. I think these finals are so predicated on superstars just willing a bucket to go in against great defense. And more so than Brown, more so than Smart, more so than any player on Boston's roster, I think Tatum is that offensive talent. That whatever defense we can sit here and say Wiggins is a good defensive matchup for him, but if Tatum plays his game and makes that shot, there's nothing Wiggins can really do about it. And I think that is such a almost like nuclear answer for Golden State that really is what Boston's been missing in spurts through the Miami series and a couple these 2 games in this series. I think that's really what Boston's missing, because if they add Tatum, who was playing superstar level against Brooklyn and Milwaukee, I think they're a little bit unbeatable.
They can be, yes. And I'm not saying that like they couldn't win if he did that, but if I'm just pulling off of what I have seen from game 1 and game 2, do I think that Boston would win if Tatum was putting up those numbers? Yeah, of course. But do I think it's necessary? No, I don't. And I think that's more the point that I'm trying to make, because I really think that he can have a greater impact than just scoring, as evidenced by game 1.
But that's a one-off game, really, because he's not.
But it doesn't have to be. I guess that's more what I'm saying.
But you're so reliant, like you said, you're reliant on Al Horford going 6 for 8 from 3, and Derek White putting up 20
I like
plus
Al Horford,
points, and Marcus Smart making a high percentage of his threes, and Pritchard made a high percentage of his threes, and Grant Williams,
everything clicked for them.
Brown, like all those guys were making shots, and then Tatum accumulated enough assists at that point. I don't think that's a thing that you can really bank on, and he hasn't shown an ability to necessarily create those looks.
Well, and right? I'm glad you said that.
Those looks will come because as his level of play rises, Golden State is going to have to put a lot more attention on him, which will open up looks for other guys. So those looks will come, but he's not creating those opportunities just purely from his play.
Well, okay, so I'm glad you brought that up, because you may not be in game 1, he was, because his teammate, like, there is something to be said about, yes, you may not be able to get Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, Peyton Pritchard, and Derek White all making like every shot that they threw up. That's probably not realistic. But a lot of the shots that they took were like wide open shots, and that was because of what Tatum was doing in creating those open shots. And I can only speak from a point guard's perspective, because that's the only position I ever played. There is something to be said about, even if you don't get the direct assist, about creating an opening for somebody else just by driving, or just by just by sucking the defense in. And even if that first pass doesn't lead to a wide open shot, that suction that you created from the defense may then lead to a second pass that's wide open. So he was doing that in the first game. And I don't think that is something that he can't do that often. He may not, because that's not what's required of him. But it's in his game, and I really think he can do it. Now, the caveat to that is going to be whether or not his teammates are going to be able to make those shots. And I don't know if Al Horford's going to be able to get that many open threes again. I don't think Golden State's going to make that mistake again. So, I mean, I think both points can be true. I think that in a perfect world, I think your scenario would be what they would want. I really think that that Boston would want him to be scoring 40, 50 a game. But if the reason why I'm bringing this up is because if Golden State is going to continue to play him that aggressively, then what I'm saying is I think they can win with my version of Jason Tatum. But in a perfect world, I think they would want your version of it.
Well, they're going to make adjustments going into game 3, and there's a reason they're in this position in the finals. They're going to make those adjustments to get him open. I mean, it's not like Golden State's doubling him at a high frequency. It seems like they're putting him on an island against Wiggins, against Draymond, against Gary Payton a lot, in situations where they can screen him off ball, hopefully get him open with a little bit of movement and get him in those spots. it seemed like they were trying to work Tatum into the mid-range, especially against a smaller defender like Gary Payton. And I think that's works. That's a reliable recipe for Boston to really put up points at a consistent rate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then hopefully Brown comes along the way.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to need both of them. They're going to, and speaking of needing both of them, the Warriors are going to need Clay. Clay has not really put his stamp on this series yet, and if Golden State is going to win this series, they're going to need him. So far, they've been able to get away with big contributions from everybody else, but like Nemanja Bjelica, who had 6 points the other night, I had to work him in there because
he's playing a big role. He's in the rotation.
He's in the rotation. He played 11 minutes, had 6 points, 5 rebounds. I was like, when is he going to take a three? He never did. So I was like, okay, well.
He's getting wide open layups. It doesn't matter.
That's not what I saw in Sacramento. Yeah, so, Boston's going to need both of their stars, and Golden State is going to need both of theirs, which is an obvious statement to say, but I say it because Clay hasn't really put his stamp on this series yet. So you'd like to think, especially for him, somebody who's been out for that long, like he deserves to have some really good games in the finals. So, I mean, with Clay being one of the greatest shooters of all time, I don't think that anybody's concerned about it. But if it continues into Boston, then I think maybe it might be concerned. But as of right now, after 2 games, it's probably just a little bit of a slump. He'll shoot his way out of it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So the last point that I have about this series is really about Curry. And we've already talked about this a little bit. And Sam and I completely disagree on this point. So it'll be interesting to see what other people's thoughts are on this. I posted something earlier today on our social media account at NTS Podcast. And I asked people this question that I had the other night during, I think it was game 1. And I think, at least in my personal opinion, my thoughts only got further validated by game 2. And it was the idea that in terms of our generation, Sam and I think people will look back at this era and you can definitively say that LeBron James was the best player of this era. And you could argue that
2 decades.
Yeah, definitely. No argument there. You won't get one out of me. So, I mean, he's top 5, top 3, top 2 player of all time, but maybe the best. You never. It depends on who you talk to. So I don't think that's a debate. Curry, when it's all said and done, especially if he ends up winning this NBA championship and he gets a Finals MVP, is going to have a very interesting resume in terms of how he stacks up against other people who have come before him and who are going to come after him. You can make an argument that he'd be a top 3 point guard ever based on, or maybe top 2 based on just pure resume. And you can get into the nitty gritty on, he's an interesting player to talk about because he affects the game in so many other ways than a traditional point guard. So that's not the debate we're going to get into. The one that I said to Sam was that I'm not going to argue that that Steph Curry is a better player than LeBron James because he's not. LeBron James is better. But for me personally, Curry has done more things that I didn't think were possible in an NBA basketball game, whether it be the amount of threes he hits per second, the difficulty of the shots that he makes. He has done more things that I feel like I will tell stories about than I will with LeBron. So in simpler terms, Curry has done more things that I find more memorable than LeBron. That's not to say that LeBron is, that's not to say that Steph is better, because he's not. But I just find the stuff that I find myself with my jaw on the floor more watching Curry than I do with LeBron. And I know you disagree with me, and that's fine. But for me, I cannot believe some of the things that he does. I feel like he's the only person who can do the things that he does.
Yeah, I think that's a different. I don't think you can argue that any single person that has played the game of basketball played it like LeBron James, though. Both these guys are individuals, and that's why they're both probably eventually going to be top 10 players to ever play this game. But to think, and maybe because it's the stage, but LeBron being in all of those finals, playing well every single time, apart from that Dallas series, just builds up so many memories in my mind of him playing absolutely phenomenal against the best defenses of those years and putting up ridiculous. Like, I've never seen Steph carry a team like LeBron did in 2017 with that awful Cleveland Cavaliers team, right? Where he's just going buzzer beater after buzzer beater against the Torontos and the Bostons of the world. And he's just going averaging like 40 points through the playoffs. It was insane. Steph's never reached that level in the playoffs for me that I've seen, right? And I think, yeah, there's moments of plays where he shoots it, like the OKC 3 when Kevin was still on OKC.
Way downtown bang.
Yeah. I think that's easily the standout, right? But is that crazier than the block out of nowhere, or LeBron going for 53 against Golden State in game 1, or even LeBron hitting that mid-range shot on Kawhi to beat the Spurs in 2013? Like, there is so many moments and times where LeBron has risen to the occasion and, against pretty much all odds and expectations, come through and really actually willed his team to win a championship. Like going in a series against Steph in 2016, those last 3 games and those performances in those last 3 games were unbelievable what he was doing. Yeah. Right. And even the series before, when they went up 2-1, he was playing probably the best basketball he's ever played in those first 3 games. And it was like, no Kyrie, no Kevin Love, no problem for this Cleveland Cavaliers team. He's making Matthew Dellavedova look good and J.R. Smith look good. Right. Like, I don't think Steph's ever reached that point. And I think it's completely crazy to, like, I'm not going to think about that Steph there. I can't even picture it in my mind right now. Like, that just doesn't resonate with me. Yeah, he shoots it from a ridiculously long, like, distance. But where are the moments, right? We're talking about regular season games at this point where you're like, wow, that was a long shot. But LeBron is doing this in the finals throughout his whole career.
So I think you and I are looking at it from 2 different lenses, because I think the lens that you're looking at it through is also taking into account the accomplishments of LeBron, like getting to those finals and having those performances in the finals, which is a fine way to look at it. I'm not here to tell you whether or not you're right or wrong for doing that. I guess I'm just saying that I'm not necessarily taking into account where it's happening per se. And the only other way that I can phrase it really is like, let's take LeBron's chase down block, for instance. If you give Giannis that runway, he can make that play. He didn't, but Giannis is big enough, long enough, strong enough, fast enough to make that play. I don't want to diminish that play in any way, shape, or form, because it was one of the best basketball plays I've ever seen. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that the unbelievable part about LeBron is that he's able to do all of these things. But the things that he does, I don't think that other players couldn't do or haven't done before. But it's what makes him great is that normally, like, the people who can make the shots that he makes can't normally rebound like him in conjunction and pass it like him and play defense and do all of these and. Normally it's one. And what makes LeBron great is that he can do everything. That is what separates him. But if we break it down individually, there are people who can make the plays that he does, but not all of them together.
So I counter that with Damian Lillard may be a better distance 3-point shooter than Stephen Curry.
But it's not just about the distance per se. And what I'm saying is that I think, at least in my mind, Steph, like some of the plays that Steph makes, I think are solely his thing. Like
What are the
I don't
plays? Like, what are the
just
plays that come to mind?
I mean, he's got so many where he just puts up threes where, I mean, I think the reason why I can't necessarily, there was one in the finals game just the other night where he had a screen set for him up in like the sort of on the right side of the court. It was near way past the arc. It was a quick pick and roll, and he's like fading out of bounds, and he's got a defender in his face, and he puts it up, and there was never a doubt that that was going in. And I'm sitting here, and I've watched him do stuff like that over the past 10 years, and I go, there are plays that he makes every single season that I go, I feel like that's just singular to him. Like, I don't feel like anybody else could do that. Maybe somebody could get lucky making it, and I'm not saying Dame couldn't make that play, but in terms of the consistency in which he makes those plays, I think is singularly unique to him.
He's not even unique to another player on his own team. Klay Thompson makes ridiculous threes, catch and shoot threes all the time. What does that even mean?
There's a difference in the style in which that they create those shots for themselves. Klay's shots don't necessarily come off of all of those pick and roll maneuvers. And Klay is more of a catch and shoot kind of guy. So he's normally getting set up for those shots. That doesn't diminish the difficulty of those shots, but there's something to be said about having the ability to create those shots off the dribble, like Steph does. And again, we're arguing the greatness of two of the greatest players of all time.
I think you're just blatantly wrong. I can't think of a play. Like, I know that OKC 3 is big, but I can't even picture what that play looks like. Like, I think a part of
that's
Steph's game,
but that proves my point. That proves my point. It's not going to be necessarily memorable for you in that sense. You find LeBron more memorable.
No, you didn't. This doesn't prove your point at all. I'm talking about LeBron is memorable. Steph is not.
We're talking about memory.
Not proving your point. The point is that, and this probably hurts your argument a little bit, because we see those shots every single game that Steph has. The quick turnaround, he's already running up the court before the ball is even in the hoop. Those are every game. That can't be memorable. Those individual plays can't be memorable.
We can't allow that to diminish how amazing those shots are. It's like the same thing with Tom Brady. You can't like say, oh, he's been there all the time, so it's not as memorable. It's the same sort of argument that people make for Brady, in the sense that, oh, he's there all the time. Oh, he had another 40 touchdown season, great. And oh, they're in the Super Bowl again, great. It's the same sort of thing. So I get maybe the fatigue of like, well, he does it all the time, so how can it be unique? Well, it's like, no, it is unique. It's unique because he does it all the time.
But that doesn't make individual moments memorable. Like, he needs to do it on a stage.
He has done it on stage.
He's not won a Finals MVP. What does that mean?
That he doesn't need one to validate his career. That's a whole separate argument.
That means he literally hasn't done it.
Oh my God, no, that's not. No.
Can you think of a play? Do you know the most memorable play of Steph Curry in the finals for me is? Okay. When he tried to throw it behind the back to Klay Thompson and went out of bounds in the first round. And then they ended up losing that game and losing the finals. That's the most memorable play for Steph Curry.
Oh, man. I really like this argument.
If that's what you're arguing, then yeah, I agree. Steph is super memorable.
So we did have somebody weigh in on this. Eric, that handle is Eric N. Cooley. Again, same guy who commented on our last post. So Eric, if you're listening, we really do appreciate you commenting. It's always, again, social media, this platform for us on Instagram is relatively new. So to have interaction this early, we really do appreciate it. I asked this question to our followers, and Eric pretty much made an argument for both of them. He laid out a lot of their, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it is I'll put it up here. It is a fairly long comment, but it pretty much lays out all of the accomplishments of Steph Curry and LeBron. And he's making the argument. The very last sentence is LeBron James and Wardell, Stephen Curry are great in their own rights. And he's right. He 100% is right. And they're great for different reasons. He lays out, he lays out the 3-point record, the 73-9, record for Steph and the Warriors, and then James and everything he's done also outside of the game. He talks about some of the stuff that he's done outside of the game, whether that be the LeBron James Family Foundation or the I Promise School. So that also has to be taken into account, I think, also with who maybe is more memorable.
Yeah, what about
it's
the
a different way of looking. It's a different way of looking at it. I hadn't considered. So Eric brings up a good point in that sense, because I had not thought of stuff outside of basketball, why people could find him memorable. And you're right, the decision, that was a huge thing. So again, Eric, thank you for commenting. We really do appreciate it, because that you brought up a good point that I definitely didn't consider.
And we got to give Eric an A, because he obviously hit that 1,000-word minimum for the post.
Yes, I appreciate the in-depth that how in-depth that was. I think, and I'm going to give him even more credit, I think he literally cited the sources.
Oh my gosh.
It says right here, Sporting News Holding Limited 2022. And Eric, if you're listening, I promise I say that in genuine love. I really do appreciate the effort to wish you to put that comment. I don't even put that much effort into some school assignments that I do.
Yeah, the discussion post during COVID for like asynchronous courses.
Respond to one of your classmates. You did great. Yeah.
In 500 words. Wow, I just loved how well you wrote this part and this part. Oh gosh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, like you're so right. I hadn't considered that. And yeah, interesting points. Have a wonderful day.
I wouldn't even put the wonderful day.
Yeah. So
no way they're reading it.
No way. All right, so that'll wrap up our NBA talk. Again, Game 3 is going to be happening on Wednesday, and that'll be the day of this release. We'll release this.
I didn't even talk about LeBron's dunks. Like LeBron's.
We're past the NBA. You lost your time. I'm already on the LIV golf.
Like there is no way Steph Curry is more memorable.
Okay, I didn't say that he was more memorable. I said the moments that he's had, to me, I will never forget.
Even clearer in favor of LeBron.
Whatever. Well, and speaking of in favor, Dustin Johnson is in favor of joining the LIV Golf League. So honestly, and for $125,000 to join the league, sorry, I totally undersold him.
Man, you
a couple zeros with that. 125 million.
Hey Dustin, we're taking 90% on this off the top for you.
I was stating his agent's cut of that.
Oh, it's more than that.
Oh, it's gonna be way more than that. All right, so Sam, give us a quick breakdown of what the LIV golf tournament is for those of you who do not know, because I know for me, I'm still learning about it as we go.
Yeah, so the LIV Golf League is a breakaway league, apart from the PGA Tour, apart from the European Tour, apart from the World Tour. It's a Saudi-backed golf league with the aim to bring in the best players into smaller fields with more creative tournaments, going to less tournaments, and really trying to create like these big events with like big names, big prize money, pretty like luxurious courses around the world. And I think that's sort of the aim with the LIV.
So I have an article right here from the Washington Post. It's titled "Everything You Need to Know About the LIV Golf Invitational Series," and it has 5 big main differences. So I'll read those real quick. It says the LIV golf tournaments will be 3 rounds as opposed to 4 on the PGA Tour, and will feature only 48 PGA. You're throwing me off. We'll only have 3 rounds as opposed to 4 rounds. 4 rounds in the PGA Tour, and will feature only 48 players. The PGA Tour events regularly consist of well over 100 golfers. So they're only going to have 48 in the LIV and only 3 rounds. So the LIV tournaments will not have cuts, meaning every golfer plays all 3 rounds and everybody gets paid. So at most PGA Tour events, only the top 65 and ties advance to play the final 2 rounds. And those who miss the cut do not receive prize money. That sucks. The LIV tournaments, yeah, that's rough. Not only did you have a bad round, you don't get paid.
Hey, congrats on making your first PGA Tour event. You sucked. You don't get paid. You
didn't get paid.
You actually spent more to get into this tournament and for housing and for everything else. You actually lost money.
You could have somebody walk up and be like, "You see that vendor over there? Yeah, he made more than you."
He actually got paid.
Yeah, he actually got paid. What's the difference between you and him? He has money.
You just went on a really expensive golf trip.
Yeah.
Really, at the end of the day.
So LIV tournaments will consist of both individual competitions along with a team event in which 8 teams of 4 golfers, as drafted before each tournament by appointed captains, compete for an additional prize. LIV tournaments will use shotgun starts in which group tees off simultaneously from 18 holes instead of only 2 groups at a time, teeing from holes number 1 and number 10, which is standard practice in the PGA Tour. This is intended to speed up play and make rounds shorter. And the last one is the LIV golf season consists of 8 tournaments as opposed to 46 on the PGA Tour, plus the 4 majors, which are not run by the PGA Tour. So those are your main differences from the LIV and the PGA Tour. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking straight at the first one that I read and saying, Ben, you kind of nailed it. I don't know if he knew that this was a rule. So Ben, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and say you didn't.
The
benefit of the doubt and say that you didn't, because I want you to sound really smart. So Ben made the argument on our show the other day that the PGA needed to shrink its field, and the LIV totally did that to 48 players.
I thought Sam posted that.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that Sam guy posted.
Was it you or was it Ben who
Ben's not nearly that smart to post that.
Ben brought up the whole soccer thing.
He brought up a lot of things. Yeah.
But I thought the soccer thing was in conjunction with whatever. It doesn't matter who.
I'm just busting your balls at this point.
Well, whatever. Anyway, what do you think of the 48 players thing?
I like it. I wish we got some bigger names, and I understand that wasn't really available. We got a lot of old names, a lot of dudes that are selling it out for some cash, which totally understand that.
For 125 million, it'd be hard to say no to.
Yeah, and if DJ's getting 125 million, which you gotta think is the most, he probably got paid more than Phil. Because Phil's kind of a spokesperson for the league, so he might have gotten paid a little more to be so out there with it. But if those guys are getting paid that, if you get paid 25 million and you're guaranteed to, and that's only joining, you're still guaranteed to make money every tournament too. And that's the big thing. Like I think the winner is like 5 million in this London one. But even if you get last, you get 100K.
Yeah.
Like you are setting yourself up for your family for success. And that's a huge thing. Yeah. Really at the end of the day. I wish, like I was saying, I wish the fields were a little stronger with the best players. And that's why I still think PGA Tour has the edge. But at the end of the day, I think this is awesome for like pushing the game of golf forward, the professional game of golf, because competition, and if there's aspects of this LIV tour that fans and players and consumers of the game really gravitate towards, then hopefully the PGA Tour and bigger tours and majors eventually will adopt those, and we really get sort of mold this and reform this product of professional golf into something that's a little more better.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the 48 thing, and it's like it's scarcity, you know, and that's what makes sports fun, is when there is a scarcity. That's why playoffs are fun. That's why the NFL does so well, because they only have 17 games now. Sorry. So,
But it's like a scarcity, yeah, but it's like almost a rarity because it impacts the value of what's going out there, right? So because there's not all of these players, the players that are there are beefed up a little more.
the team competitions, I'm going to be really interested to see how that works, because if they're only playing 3 rounds, does that mean that like the 4th day is dedicated to team play?
No, I think it's only 3 rounds. And then they just like the whole time you have your individual score and then you're playing for your team at the same time.
Oh,
That's
okay,
what I think it is.
Oh, okay. That would make more sense.
We don't really know until the tournament this weekend, really what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. I was looking on the website. They draft the different teams the week of. So that's, I think, a really interesting aspect that they could sort of market in a way. I mean, our guys going to be wearing what are some of the teams? Aces.
Yeah, I'm looking at the names and logos right here. Stinger, GC, Iron
Right.
Heads, HY
Like, are they
Flyers.
gonna have jersey polos? Like, that'd be kind of cool.
Smash, Majestics, Punch Crushers, Fireballs. Phil's team is HY Flyers, so High Flyers. Iron Heads. What does that say? Cleeks? Cleeks, I think. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be an interesting aspect.
Maybe instead of looking at the blurry picture, the one below it that actually has the names typed out is all good. That would be better. Okay, so Dustin Johnson's team is 4 aces. Phil's is the High Flyers. Sergio Garcia is Fireballs. So they got to get creative with their names. These are kind of lacking.
What do you think the GC is? Do you think it's like golf club?
Maybe.
It's just,
yeah,
that's interesting. Like, are the, so DJ and Phil are captains, right? Are they going to always be captains of their respective teams?
I don't know. You got to talk to the commissioners of the league. That was the big controversy around this league, was where the money was coming from, and obviously that has to be taken into account when. I don't know. Obviously, it's taken into account by people who have elected not to join the LIV. So it's a thing. It's there. Whether or not how much value you decide to put into it is obviously up to the individual. So, but we're mainly just talking about the tournament itself. But
a couple things. One is the question of how does these players playing in this league impact their ability to go back to the PGA Tour. Right now, they're able to play in majors, but majors could decide, hey, we're not letting you play for us. That will be interesting coming up. Secondly, I think with DJ's money coming out, there was then a report of Tiger was offered $1 billion with a B
billion
to join the LIV.
It's really hard to say no to.
I mean, that dude, I think he's probably a billionaire at this point.
If he's not, then he's close. I mean, that's insane amount of money.
Which, who knows? He's estimated at 800 million.
Oh, well, I mean, 200 million short. Child's play at that point.
Who knows how long that would be for? He's probably someone that his history is probably a little more cautious to his reputation at this point and his image. So yeah. I totally understand why he'd probably forgo that, but who knows? Maybe if this thing takes off this year and more players start to jump ship, he might be more inclined. He's really only playing the majors anyway.
Also, if the golf ends up being great, people might not care
about everything else. So this is what I was really going to talk about. So there's a lot of teams, right? And So the World Cup, this upcoming World Cup is going to be in Qatar, right? And that was sort of like a pretty controversial thing. Like they were getting the World Cup and different things like that. You have that element that's sort of getting a little more not understood, but like people are sort of opening up to that, right? And accepting it. That's what I was going to say. Accepting it. And you have in soccer, a bunch of these big teams are owned by sort of shady organizations or institutions that you don't really agree with how they've made their money. But over time, it seems like that's less and less of an issue almost for people. And it's now just about the sport. So I'm curious to see if that's what's going to happen with this LIV tour, of where this year and last year, when they first came out, it was like, there's no way people are going to join that because of all the things. And then if, say, 2 years down the road, Rory's in there and Brooks is in there and all these big name players are all playing in this thing because it turns out to be so much better than the PGA Tour, no matter of where this money is coming from.
Well, to me, it reminds it like the thing that I think of is with certain NFL players who have faced like significant criminal charges, and then you end up seeing them in the league again. So I feel like it's kind of the same in the sense that, like, yes, the onset is people react really harshly to it, but then eventually it doesn't go away, but it doesn't seem to matter as much as the actual play on the field, or in this case, the course. So,
which is probably pretty sad, but
yeah, it's not right. But
like the fact that Deshaun Watson might still be in the league after you see that new thing that came out.
Yeah, the numbers up to like 66 or something, which is just absurd. Yeah, so it is sad because the fact that players can do stuff like that and still be allowed in the league. He just got an absurd amount of money from the Browns.
Deshaun, yeah.
So it's a shame, but that's as beautiful and awesome as sports is. That's one of the downsides. Talent seems to trump all when it comes to that. So,
yeah.
So, all right. Well, do you have anything more on LIV?
Yeah, I think I'm going to try. I know apparently tickets are super expensive for it. That's also a kind of a like negative for the tour so far, is tickets are way more expensive than PGA Tour events. But there's going to be one in Portland, which is only a couple hours away from me. So I'm going to try to see how expensive tickets are and maybe hopefully go, which would be honestly really cool to see DJ and Phil Mickelson in person.
I'm trying to look up prices just to see if I can pull one up. Maybe.
Yeah, do you see anything?
I see grounds passes. So a 3-day grounds pass is $185.
Woo.
Saturday grounds pass is $70, Friday $70, Thursday $70. So
I'm not going to be there, guys. Sorry. I'm just not going to be able to go.
Oh man!
I'd rather play a couple rounds of golf than go to that.
There are there's a military discount, so here's what I'll buy the ticket for you, and then reimburse. There you go. We'll get a discount.
All right, we covered the taxes for it. There we go.
Oh, and you know what? First responder ticket. So better yet, I'll have my dad purchase it, and that's 25% off a single day pass. So there you go.
Are you Aaron Russell? Yeah.
What do I look like? Oh man. All right. Well, that'll wrap up episode 137 for us. We hope you all have a wonderful week and a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the NBA finals. I know we will. By the time we are filming again, game 3 will have happened. Game 4 will have happened. And depending on when we film, maybe game 5 will have happened. So is the series going to be over by then? Who knows? We'll find out.
Are we celebrating a Warriors win?
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe Boston won. Who knows? You never know. All right. Have a wonderful week. Have a wonderful weekend. And we will see you all at a later date.
To be determined.
Yes.